The desert was silent except for the crunch of boots on dry earth and the occasional rustle of loose gravel shifting down the mountainside. A small U.S. Navy SEAL team moved cautiously through a narrow valley, their mission clear: exfiltrate after days of reconnaissance deep in hostile territory. But silence was often deceptive in war zones, and that night it carried a hidden weight. The air was too still, too watchful. The team leader, Marcus Luttrell, a man whose reputation was known even among enemies, felt it in his gut. Something was wrong. And then it happened. Gunfire erupted from both ridges, the sharp crack of rifles bouncing through the valley. The SEALs dived for cover, bullets sparking off rocks around them. An ambush. They were pinned, and escape seemed impossible. Quick. Pause! Comment where you're watching from. And if you love these stories, hit subscribe now. The next one will blow your mind, and it's even crazier. Pinned against jagged stone, Marcus pulled a red SOS flare from his pack, firing it skyward. The flare hissed and burst into a fiery streak that lit the night. It was both a call for help and a gamble. The bright glow would alert any friendlies nearby, but it would also expose their position to more enemies. And enemies were exactly what came. Dozens of figures closed in from the ridgelines, their shadows darting in the flare's dying light. The SEALs prepared for a last stand, their weapons ready, but their ammunition low. Then, from somewhere beyond their sight, came the sound that changed everything: the low, deliberate crack of a rifle. One insurgent on the ridge jerked backward, lifeless before he hit the dirt. A pause. Another crack. A second figure collapsed. The SEALs froze for a moment, realizing they weren't alone. Someone was out there, watching over them. Among the wreckage of a shot-down drone nearby, a young woman stirred. Lieutenant Sarah Kane, a British SAS-trained combat medic, had been part of a joint advisory mission when her team was overrun. She had been separated, surviving by sheer willpower until the SEALs stumbled upon her position hours before. She wasn't supposed to be here, not in the middle of a full-scale ambush. But war had a way of shattering expectations. Sarah pulled a compact Sig Sauer P226 pistol from her holster, her eyes locking with Marcus's. She wasn't just a medic, she was a fighter. The sniper's work continued. A third shot rang out, then a fourth. Each one dropped an enemy trying to flank the SEALs. The precision was chilling, the timing flawless. Whoever was out there wasn't just skilled, he was a ghost. The fifth shot shattered the enemy leader's attempt to rally his fighters. Panic rippled through the ambushers as their formation collapsed under the invisible assault. With the enemies in disarray, Marcus shouted the order to push forward. The SEALs surged from cover, rifles spitting controlled bursts. Sarah moved with them, her pistol steady in her grip. In one fluid motion, she dropped two attackers who had managed to close the distance. Her movements were crisp, practiced, and deadly. Between firing, she slid to her knees beside a wounded SEAL, expertly applying a tourniquet under fire. She wasn't just brave, she was indispensable. The fight pressed on, the sound of gunfire echoing across the valley walls. Sarah's courage was tested again when Marcus went down behind cover, grazed by shrapnel. Without hesitation, she seized an M4 carbine from the ground, laying down suppressing fire while dragging him to safety. Her green combat fatigues were streaked with dust and blood, but her resolve never wavered. The sniper's presence was felt even if unseen. Each time the SEALs were nearly overwhelmed, another distant shot rang out, perfectly timed to tilt the balance back in their favor. He never wasted a bullet, never missed. In the chaos of battle, his unseen hand was the thread keeping them alive. As the team reached the outskirts of the valley, the ambushers regrouped for a final attempt to crush them. Dozens of fighters emerged from the shadows, firing wildly. Sarah spotted a discarded M249 SAW light machine gun half buried in the dirt. Without thinking, she grabbed it, bracing the weapon against her shoulder. The roar of its fire cut through the night as she swept the enemy line, bullets tearing into the ground and scattering their charge. The SEALs seized the moment, advancing toward the extraction point. Marcus raised his comms device, calling in air support. But he knew it would take precious minutes before reinforcements arrived. Until then, they were on their own. Sarah's knuckles were white on the trigger of the saw, her body shaking under the recoil. But she didn't stop. The SEALs fought, with renewed energy, inspired by the medic who refused to back down. Then came the silence. The kind that only follows when the last shot has been fired and the last enemy has fallen. The valley was littered with the bodies of attackers, their ambush broken and their will to fight shattered. Sarah lowered the saw, her chest heaving, her eyes scanning for movement. In the distance, she thought she saw a faint glint of scope glass high on the ridge. The sniper. The ghost who had saved them. But in the blink of an eye, the reflection vanished. Whoever he was, he remained hidden. The thump of helicopter rotors soon filled the air as air support arrived, drawn by the fading glow of the SOS flare. The SEALs helped one another to their feet, battered but alive. Sarah, covered in dust and blood, climbed aboard the bird with the rest of them. She had come into the fight as an outsider, but she was leaving as one of them. As the helicopter lifted off, Marcus gave her a nod of respect. "You saved lives tonight," he said, his voice rough but certain. Sarah didn't respond with words, only a quiet acknowledgement. She knew the truth, that none of them would have survived without the silent sniper in the hills. The helicopter banked toward safety, the valley shrinking beneath them. The sniper never revealed himself, never asked for recognition. He was a shadow, a protector who needed no thanks. But his legend would live on in the whispers of those who survived. And Sarah Kane, the medic who fought like a warrior, would be remembered beside names like Marcus Luttrell and Chris Kyle, her courage etched into the fabric of military lore. The night returned to silence as the helicopter disappeared over the horizon, leaving only the ridges, the wind, and the ghost sniper watching from afar. The mission was over, but the story was just beginning. The kind of story people would tell for years, one that made you believe in courage, fate, and the unseen. Guardians who turned the tide of war. The mountains of Afghanistan were cloaked in darkness, their jagged edges cutting into the night sky. A small team of U.S. Navy SEALs moved carefully through the rocky terrain, every step calculated. Their mission had stretched longer than planned, and fatigue hung heavy on their shoulders. The silence of the night was broken suddenly by a sound no soldier ever wants to hear, a burst of gunfire from the cliffs above. Tracer rounds lit the night, forcing the SEALs to dive for cover, an ambush. They were outnumbered, caught in a perfect trap. Commander Michael Murphy, known for his unwavering courage, instantly realized the danger. Ammunition was limited. The enemy had the high ground, and reinforcements were far away. He reached into his pack, pulled out an SOS flare, and fired it skyward. The brilliant light streaked into the darkness, a desperate call for help, knowing full well it might draw even more enemies their way. Quick pause. Comment where you're watching from. And if you love these stories, hit subscribe now. The next one will blow your mind. And it's even crazier. The flare burned like a scar against the sky, illuminating the terrain. Enemy silhouettes became visible on the ridgelines, moving into attack positions. The SEALs braced for the inevitable. Then, in the chaos, a figure moved among them. Captain Emily Ward, an Air Force pararescue officer attached to the mission, stepped into the fray. She had been ordered to stay behind during combat operations, but orders meant little when the people she fought beside were in danger. Clutching her M4A1 carbine, she slid behind cover and returned fire, her weapon barking defiantly into the night. The SEALs glanced at her in surprise, but there was no time to question it. Every rifle counted now. The ambush tightened. Bullets ripped through the rocks, chipping stone and sending fragments into the team. The enemy was relentless, pressing from every angle. Just when the circle began to close, the sharp, deliberate crack of a rifle echoed through the valley. An enemy fighter on the ridge collapsed instantly, struck down by a shot no one had seen coming. Seconds later, another figure fell. Then another. The shots came at a measured pace, each one precise, each one fatal. A hidden sniper had joined the battle. The SEALs didn't know who it was, but legend spread quickly in war zones. Some whispered the name of Adelbert Waldron, the Vietnam War sniper whose uncanny accuracy had become military legend. Whoever this was, his work bore the same ghost-like precision. 5 shots, 5 lives extinguished. The ambush staggered by, a force they couldn't see. Emily's heart pounded as she realized what was happening. The sniper wasn't just helping. They were dismantling the enemy's advantage piece by piece. Still, the danger was far from over. More fighters poured from the hills, their shouts carrying across the night. Emily shifted her rifle and laid down suppressive fire, her rounds carving gaps for the SEALs to reposition. Through the chaos, a SEAL was hit, collapsing in the dirt. Without hesitation, Emily dashed across open ground under fire, bullets striking around her. She grabbed the wounded man by his vest and dragged him to cover. Her teeth clenched as she fought against the weight. A round struck close enough to kick dust into her face, but she refused to stop. The moment they slid behind a rock, she switched instantly into medic mode, applying pressure and bandages while still keeping her weapon within reach. Her courage under fire wasn't just inspiring, it was contagious. Michael Murphy caught her eye and gave a nod. It was a silent acknowledgement. She wasn't just another officer, she was part of the fight. The enemy regrouped, their numbers still overwhelming. Grenades exploded nearby, sending showers of rock and dirt into the air. Emily and the SEALs huddled low, returning fire when they could. And always, just when it seemed like they would be crushed, the sniper's rifle cracked again, each shot carving away at the enemy's morale. Then came the moment of decision. The SEALs needed to break free and reach an extraction zone, but the enemy had machine gun nests positioned perfectly to block their escape. Emily scanned the battlefield, spotting the nest's muzzle flash. Without hesitation, she grabbed a grenade launcher attachment for her rifle, locked in a round, and fired. The explosion lit the night as the nest went silent. The path was open. "Move!" Murphy shouted. The SEALs surged forward, Emily right beside them. She fired in short bursts, conserving ammo, her movements sharp and disciplined. The sniper's unseen hand guided them, each threat neutralized before it could overwhelm. It was as if the battlefield itself was bending to give them a chance. The enemy, desperate, mounted a final push. Dozens charged down the slope, their weapons blazing. Emily braced herself. She wasn't just thinking of survival, she was thinking of the men beside her, the wounded SEAL she had saved, the mission that had to succeed. She lifted her rifle and fought with every ounce of strength she had, pushing back wave after wave. And then, as quickly as it had begun, it ended. The last echo of gunfire faded. Smoke drifted across the valley. The enemy scattered, broken, and unwilling to continue against the unstoppable force of a sniper they couldn't touch and a team that refused to die. Emily's chest heaved as she lowered her rifle. Her uniform was streaked with dust and blood, her hands trembling not with fear, but with the rush of having survived. She glanced back toward the ridge, wondering if she would finally see the man who had saved them all. But the sniper was gone. No movement, no trace, just silence. Minutes later, the thumping of helicopter rotors filled the air. The extraction team had seen the SOS flare, and they were closing in. The SEALs helped their wounded aboard, one by one. Emily climbed in last, pausing to take one last look at the valley below. It was quiet again, the kind of quiet that only comes after chaos. Somewhere in that darkness, the sniper was watching, or maybe already gone. As the helicopter lifted off, Murphy leaned toward Emily. "You saved more than one life tonight," he said firmly. She didn't answer, only gave a small nod, her eyes still scanning the ridge lines as the valley slipped away. The SEALs would never forget that night. They would remember the SOS flare burning against the dark, the sudden voice of a ghostly rifle, and the woman who stood shoulder to shoulder with them when death closed in. And though no one ever claimed the shots, no one ever doubted whose legend had grown in that valley. The kind of sniper whose name echoed through history, unseen but unforgettable. The helicopter carried them back toward safety, but for every man and woman on board, the story was far from over. It would be told and retold. A tale of courage, precision, and survival against impossible odds. And for Emily Ward, her name would be etched alongside warriors whose legacies were already immortal. She had stepped into fire and proven herself, and the memory of that night would live on, a story of bravery that demanded to be remembered.